Melancholy is completely absent for me in the spirit of this time, for I am filled with inspiration. And when the people ask, "Who shall go for us? Who shall go to the trenches?" Here am I. Send me, Lord. Send me. And those of you that know what verse I'm talking about in the Bible, my respect to you. But we have to remember also that while this inspiration is inspirational, and as we continue to move forward in the path before us, we must also recognize that the proclivity that we have to see the world in a particular way, although we might be so sure of the ways in which we see the world, it is also very much the case that we could definitely be wrong. And I'm to a point now to where I've never been more sure of myself in life, and yet simultaneously, I've never been so sure that I'm also wrong in many different ways, because I know that I'm an ever-evolving and everlasting being in which I am an immortal soul. And if you are resonating with this kind of message, feel free to give this a like, okay? Leave a comment. This is going to be the best way to support this kind of content, because if you are getting spiritually electrified in these types of situations, in the ways in which I am, the best way to show your support to one another is not necessarily to give. It's actually recognizing when to stop. You should just be able to give and give and give until you realize when it's necessary to stop. And I think that a lot of people want to deplete themselves to the point in which, and they don't want to, they just want to not want to, deplete themselves to the point in which they're always leaking energy. And make no mistake, this is it, guys. Whatever is going down, this is it. We're, like, society is cooked, yes, but something strange is going on, something bizarre is going on, and I feel more called than ever before to step up to the plate, to rise as a godlike savage, and to pursue forth into the domain of God's land and God's will itself. I feel as though I'm growing ever more close to God each and every day, and yet simultaneously I also feel as though my perception and my complexion within God is ever changing in of itself. And this is not to say that the Bible is the only truth, okay? But I think a lot of people will try to pedestalize the Bible in certain senses, but they cannot not recognize that faith in Christ comes before faith in faithfulness. And I've been thinking today about why there is the hierarchy of the Corinthians the way that it is. And it goes the Father, Jesus Christ, man, woman, child. In a sense, you as a person have to mature inside yourself to the degree in which you see that this is the natural way of doing things. But I'm not speaking specifically in regard to relationships or anything like that, or that men are the superior. What I'm saying is that this is a natural law in a everlasting timeline, and your faith in Christ has to come before your faith in faithfulness in the Father. And it's only through the faith in the faithfulness of the Father that we can, because here's the thing about people like in the Eastern religions and other religions in general, right? They want to put the cart before the horse rather than the other way around. They want to say that Jesus Christ, for example, is the, like, let's say that he's not a real person, just for whatever's sake. People might say that, okay, there's evidence for this and that. That's fine. But think about this, right? Okay, you've watched a movie before. Does the movie that you watch make the story real? Like, is the story that you contextualize inside your mind, does that make it real? right? That makes it, and believe me, okay, I'm going somewhere with this, but we have to give some context here. So people that are wanting to stick around, this is going to be the video for you. If you're not understanding what I'm saying, or you don't really know where I'm going, but you're not really interested in knowing, this is now the time to go somewhere else. But for those of you that are wanting to stay, think about the last movie you watched. Okay, was that movie real? Was that movie real? Or was that movie a story that you were able to piece together through images in a domain of understanding? Okay, it's the latter, right? The story itself is a fiction, perhaps, right? Maybe unless it's a documentary or whatever. But more often than not, you probably are, if you're reading a book or you're watching a movie, it's the story that's real in of itself. It's the story, right? Let's take this for example. Even if Jesus Christ was not a real person, it has no consequence of the story that is Jesus Christ in himself. Because the story of Jesus Christ, you literally cannot, almost by definition, write a more horrific story that is also so beautiful and so profound. It doesn't matter if Jesus Christ was a real person or not. Your faith in Christ is what leads to faithfulness. And this is why a lot of the world, we are being globally gaslit into believing that Jesus Christ is a certain way, and you can only see Jesus Christ in a very particular way. This is where I'm being very careful with my new theory of timeline theory. And I'm going to restructure and reorganize this, because the more I analyze this timeline theory, the more I'm starting to realize that I have to reorganize the entire semantic language in which I'm describing things. So for now, I'm just going to call it the timeline theory. But the timeline theory, which the more that I think about it and the more I contextualize it, and I'm speaking about it because at first I was thinking, okay, maybe I don't want to speak about it because I don't want to lead people astray. But now I'm thinking about it as, no. This is actually going to crystallize the timeline theory in of itself, because I am literally distributing the timeline theory to a series of timelines in the universe. But the universe is a you and I verse, whereas the multiverse is a multiple universe. What if, and I know that this may seem like a high thought, but I'm not. I'm very grounded in this, and I'm actually being very serious. Okay, lions, zebras, elephants, humans, we all have our own universe, and we all have our own culture. We all have our own ways of being, right? It's not to say that one species is better than the other, right? It's the kind of the same thing with racism, right? Like racism, people hate other races because they think that they like are living in a different universe, right? Well, what if they are living in a different universe? Okay, what if men and women are living in a different universe, a you and I verse, but we are existing together in the multiverse? We are existing together in the multiverse with different species. What if, I'm just giving this as something for you to ponder, what if we already exist in a multiverse, and we are, as a collective consciousness, experiencing a timeline together that exists in a series of timelines that has a universal circular timeline that is in that everlastingness? What if? Okay, I'm just saying, what if that's the case? Because that is the logical conclusion of where my timeline theory leads to. And what I'm thinking about is the psychological and philosophical analysis of this thing. Because this is psychology. This is deeper, I genuinely think. This is deeper and gives more context to Carl Jung's archetypes. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not in Kansas anymore. Okay, we are on a whole new timeline. And I genuinely think that if you exist on a timeline in the world and you are operating not from an individualized timeline through the world timeline or the worldly timeline, you cannot be saved. You cannot, you're trying to have faith and faithfulness before you're having faith in Christ. Because you need that faith in Christ to ground you. Okay, several years ago, I had a dream where this was right after I began to follow Christ. This was over 4 years ago now, almost to the day. And at the time, I was trying to piece together the understanding of the chakras with following Christ and like, well, is this right? Like, is this true? I don't know, because it feels true. I've experienced the chakras. I know what that feels like. It doesn't feel wrong. It doesn't feel wrong, but just because something doesn't feel wrong doesn't mean it isn't wrong, right? So I prayed about it at the time and I asked God for guidance because I had just began to follow Christ and I was hyperactive. Like anybody that's just starting out their following of Christ or their following of God, it's almost as if there's like this understanding that everybody knows that when you're in that mode, you're so close to God, and God is just so powerful and so present. Like everything everywhere is a synchronicity, right? It's just so powerful. It's just so amazing to live in that moment and that time period, right? But you can have this always. Like it's not just a one-time thing. It's always present. It's just not as heavy in its existential angst, I suppose you could say. But anyway, in the dream, I had a dream where I was walking with Jesus Christ, who was in white robes, through a forest. And then I saw 7 fiery chakra flames that seemingly reflected the flames of the chakras, right? Like there was energy fields, but they were floating like 7 balls of fire, floating above the floor with the trees in the background, right? And I asked Jesus, like, what was this? What is this? And he says, the Son of God was Jesus Christ. Ground yourself in the Father. And he just, poof, he does that motion. And then the flames, the ball of flames, shoot into the ground. And now I completely understand the dream. I've never fully understood it. I've never fully understood it. I guess technically, if you want to think about timelines, yeah. I've never fully understood that dream until today. I've never understood that dream until today because, again, if you try to go into the Eastern religions, you are literally trying to drink spiritual poison. You're putting spiritual carts before the spiritual horses. That's what you're doing. And that's one of the reasons why there's so many profound things, like in the Tao Te Ching, for example. Okay, faith in Christ is not just faith in Him, the physical Christ, right? It's not just faith in Him. It's faith in the oneness of life. And then faith in faithfulness is faith in the totality of your relationship to that oneness. That is what I saw in that dream. And that's why here and now, they don't want you to know this. Okay, we are literally being spiritually gaslit at every single step of the corner of the way with these metaphiles. Y'all know what I'm really saying here. I don't want to say it on YouTube anyway. The metaphiles who are in control of the world don't want us to know about these things. They want us to believe that we're crazy. Because if we are convinced that we're the crazy ones, then all the NPCs that are just a phenomenon in existence, all of the NPCs are not going to completely understand us or want to understand us, and they're going to be playing for the system. All of the people that are awakened, they're going to be the ones that completely reshape this existence. I said this yesterday, and I said this in a post in my YouTube channel today, where I genuinely feel as though I will revolutionize the world in such a way, or I will die trying. I will die trying, or I'll be a punk nobody that dies trying. And I will be damned if I do not at least try. So that's what I'm doing with these kinds of videos. That's what I'm doing with my work that I'm doing. That's what I'm doing when I'm bringing you this spiritual electricity. And I swear, a lot of this has to do with sun gazing recently. I swear. And look, people might think that that's crazy. And it feels like I'm starting semen retention again for the first time. It feels like I'm starting celibacy for the first time. It feels like I'm starting meditation for the first time. It feels like I'm starting prayer for the first time. It feels like staring into the sun is a minor psychedelic experience. That's how powerful sun gazing has been. And I've only been doing it for like not even a week, like consistently. I've done it off and on for the years, and I've known about it for years, but I haven't actually fully committed to it like the way I'm committing to it now. And I am literally watching my life transform so fast. I'm having to keep up with my own growth. And I'm not advocating for this kind of behavior, of course. I'm just saying that this is what it is. I'm just saying this has been my experience. And you can feel in my virility, you can feel in my livelihood that this is something more. There's something more here. There's something more to be had here. And they want us divided. They want us to not see the oneness of life. They want us to think that we don't live in this beautiful, magnificent multiverse that we really do. Because when people think about multiverse, they usually think about like realities in different realities, right? Or like universes in different universes. No. What I'm saying is that every single soul is its own singularity of some kind. Every single soul, like we're so focused on looking for the singularity in AI that we don't see that we are our own singularities in our own relationship to God. There is never going to be anybody like you ever again. Like, do you understand that? There's never going to be anyone like you again. That is so cool. That is so awesome. That is so amazing. And yet it's not about worshiping yourself though. It's not about worshiping yourself. It's about understanding that you are the key to your own relationship to Christ. When Jesus Christ says that where your treasure is, there also will be your heart. Your heart is the key to his kingdom inside you. Like this is, and when you think about time, like I knew that, but when I think about it in the sense of timelines, that revolutionizes your own timeline. And a lot of people want to stay on their own timelines, and they want to be involved with these church timelines, or like the Catholic timeline, or the Orthodox timeline, or the Islam timeline, or the Buddhist timeline. Like they want to be associated with these religious timelines, that they don't see that it's between you and God. Like it's just between you and him. And it always has been, and it always will be. That is everlasting life. And we have the great fortune, like, do you remember there's a story about a guru on his deathbed, and they're like, oh, we're going to miss you, we're going to miss you. And he says, where will I go? Where would I go? That's really something to think about, and that's what I'm going to leave you with for today. I hope this message was useful and insightful. I hope everybody has a blessed day. Stay blessed. This kind of stuff is so cool for me, and it's a little bit, I know it's a lot more deep. It's not just a little deep. It's a really deep topic for a lot of people to talk about and to hear about, but I felt really called to talk about this today because I'm so pumped about it. I'm so pumped that I'm feeling in my relationship to Christ and God himself, it's just growing stronger, even though my perception of what Christ is and who Christ is completely different. Again, it doesn't matter if he was real or not. Like, as far as a person, and I'm not Gnostic. Okay, a lot of Christians might think that I'm being Gnostic right now. I'm not Gnostic. Again, this is on their timeline. Like, you have to, this is where the timeline theory comes into play. If you don't separate yourself from the worldly timelines, you might not even know that you're in a timeline. And they might be, oh my gosh, they might be on a timeline, whereas we're in timelessness. Okay. I'm going to sit with that for a minute. Peace. Until next time.